It's Wednesday, 6:37, 25th of January, 2012. I've been meaning to make a video about quantum events in biology for a while. And where to start? After my biology degree, I got interested in biology with the completion of the Human Genome Project, but also when I learned about microtubules. A microtubule is just a structural protein. Its interons are conserved across all animal kingdoms because they're important for cell division. The microtubules are either alpha or beta subunits. Like I think it's 13 layers. They're curled up in a tube. So it's like a brick wall that forms a tube, and then they grow at a positive end by additional subunits being brought in, I guess, by other proteins and then assembling. Now, if you think about a paramecium, it also has microtubules, which forms, I guess, like an endoskeleton. Think of it as its nervous system, because a paramecium can escape from a pipette tip. It can process basic information in the environment. It can escape from predators, find prey. And to do that, it's got to have some basic logic assembly for and or if kind of where operations. So I think that maybe the microtubules are transferring electrons along them, which gives it some kind of computational ability. For example, I think it's Roger Penrose and Stuart Hoffman purport that microtubules are important for the origin of consciousness. It's their quantum origin of consciousness, and they say that in the tubulin there's a hydrophobic pocket that an electron, I think, can bind, and then when the electron is transferred, the protein changes shape slightly, so it goes from the alpha to the beta. So basically, you get cascades of these shape patterns moving along the microtubules, which I guess are like action potentials traveling along a nerve, like a neuron. Now, it's interesting that before life evolved, like in a biotic sense, in a prebiotic sense, no doubt evolution would have been governed by quantum events. And there's many quantum events in biology. So one of them is this computational ability in the microtubules. Maybe it's how sperm chemotaxin find the egg. Of course, they follow chemical messages, but they gotta use that message in a coherent way to make simple decisions. So it has to be in the microtubules in the tail. That microtubule again crosses between nerve cells through electrical gap junctions, and maybe that is important in consciousness. And also, it's in anaphase 1 in cell division. Now, the microtubules grow out from the centriole. They go to the centromere, which is a complex of like 200 proteins, and they grab the chromosomes, and then they pull them apart. If you imagine the size of that microtubule, maybe it's like 10 nanometers in diameter compared to the whole volume of the cell, which might be like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of nanometers. How does the microtubule find the centromere and bind perfectly to where it has to bind? It has to be with quantum computation, with these patterns traveling up and down the microtubule. It has to be. Like if you think about like quantum mechanics, the single slit, double slit experiment, where a photon can exist in two places at once. We see quantum events in larger molecules like the buckyfullerene, the buckyball, carbon-60. If you take the stitching pattern on a football or soccer ball, it's formed of like a pentagon surrounded by 5 hexagons, and then that's all connected in black and white. You can picture it. So that's the football has 60 kind of vertexes, and it's found that buckyfullerenes can go into superpositions and be in two places at the same time. Take a recent experiment in 2009 of like a piezoelectric like diving board built on a silicon chip that might have 10 trillion atoms in it. It was found to behave in a quantum superposition where it can be both vibrating and stationary at the same time. So here we have an example of a structure with 10 trillion atoms, and it's forming a superposition. So no doubt superpositions in biological states are important for problem solving. Like the greatest problem in biology, there's many great problems, but one of them is that's gold. The U.S. said they're not going to increase interest rates, and we have dollar weakness and gold strength. Big problem in biology is the folding of proteins. You can have like 500 amino acids, and every time it folds up perfectly, and you can talk about like low energy states and etc. But I think that there's got to be some kind of element of quantum problem solving to form those alpha and beta sections and have that nest into its three-dimensional structure. Because if a protein isn't formed properly, that's one of the causes for disease. And then if you go on to like photosynthesis, the fastest lasers now are like picosecond lasers, where they can flick on and off at picoseconds, and that's the kind of time frame that I think these quantum events occur in. And it's found that when a photon hits a chlorophyll, like the antennae say that gathers the energy from the sun, the photon is transferred to the reaction center with almost 100% efficiency. It's found with, I guess, scanning with these pico lasers or chromato lasers, the photon doesn't take a random walk across all the protein subunits in the chlorophyll kind of assembly to get to the reaction center. It goes, I think, by maybe a very efficient short path. It's almost like there's a superposition going on in the chlorophyll. It solves all possible paths all at the same time, and it picks the most optimum path. Like, that's the basis of quantum computation in terms of capturing a subatomic particle in some kind of ion trap and then having it interact with another particle in an ion trap and lining up these qubits so they can get into a coherent state, so somehow you can get an input and an output and basically solve problems not in serial as we do with current like semiconductors. It's just serial processing. We're talking about parallel processing where a quantum computer could find all possible answers simultaneously all at the same time, which basically means factoring large prime numbers and making obsolete the 128-bit encryption that the internet has right now, and basically changes the whole future of economics for the whole world if mankind can create a supercomputer that has a basis in quantum computation. And bearing in mind that nature has been evolving for 4.5 billion years, so obviously nature has been exploiting these quantum events in biology for eons. So we've covered chlorophyll, DNA, and then the last one might be like the mutation rate for a bacteria. You put a bacteria in a stressful environment, say where there's no sugar, then I believe this is referring to adaptive mutations. Basically, mutations should occur randomly across all sections of the DNA sequence, but it's a contemptuous area of biology, and the research isn't definitive and clear. But my recall of the few papers that I've read is that if there's a location where a mutation will be beneficial to the bacteria, I believe the randomness breaks down and you're seeing more mutations in a location where that point mutation or deletion or whatever, call it point mutations, it would be beneficial for the bacteria to have that point mutation. And it's no surprise that in DNA, I said then I hate saying the center of DNA is pyrimidine, and pyridine rings, which either have 2 or 3 hydrogen bonds between them. So you got to think about all those delocalized electrons that are shared in the hydrogen bond. And it's the idea that DNA might behave like a quantum supercomputer. If you think about intron homing, where if you splice out that little section of DNA that might be like 10 base pairs long, and you show it to a section of genetic material where that intron is missing, that little chunk of DNA will go and find its original location in the sequence and insert itself. That's like you going to the library and taking an arbitrary book, and the book just automatically goes and shelves itself exactly where it belongs, which is, well, I don't have two other screenplay books here, but let's say the screenplay book's right here. It shelves itself. You can't quite see that, but you get the idea. It's a nice analogy. So clearly, the base pairs have like what, 32 to 38 atoms, and then there's the sugar backbone. We're talking like less than 1,000 atoms that can share electrons. There has to be electron transfer and algorithms being run, which gives that little chunk of DNA a basic problem-solving ability through quantum superpositions, or like a basic like 2 or 3 bit quantum computer that allows that chunk of DNA to find its way. If that makes any sense at all. So that's roughly my take on, without having a script prearranged, on my interest on quantum events in biology. And that's gold up $40 today. Oh my god. I went for a jog right here before the news. I didn't know the news was out. Rule number 1 in trading is know the economic calendar for the day, and don't go for a jog before important data.